What is going on, everyone? We are finally back a week later after watching. That logo is nasty, man. Every time I see that thing, I love that animation. I want to get that so badly right over that shoulder. That thing would be so nice. Anyway, we are back with our UFC 236 review. Recap more than a review. But we are going to talk a little bit about kind of what went down, how I thought my picks were going to go and didn't go, unfortunately. And then we'll talk about, what leads into the next chapter for all these fighters. And not just every fighter on the card, but new fights coming up. You know the deal. But we're finally back. It's Monday. I am on schedule for once, so I'm keeping up the schedule pretty nice. I'm glad you guys have appreciated that and came in and tuned in with me, so thank you so much. So let's get, I guess, right into it, man. Let's talk about the two. We'll get to the co and the main event. I call them the two main events because they were such good fights. But we'll talk about them after this. I did want to start off with Khalil Roundtree and how good he looked. Did anybody watch the Khalil Roundtree fight? I'm sure if you guys watched the main card, if you ordered the pay-per-view, you saw that fight, and man, did he look good against a guy in Eric Anders who, is hard to look good against sometimes. Lyoto Machida beat him, but it was in, a decision fight that wasn't really ever one way or another. A lot of people thought that Eric Anders could have won that fight as well. And granted, while this fight was a decision, I think everybody everybody knew who won that fight. I mean, for goodness sake, Khalil Roundtree knocked him down 4 times in the second round, in the second round 4 times. It was insane, man. And they said Khalil had been training in Muay Thai. He'd gone to Thailand and been training Muay Thai, and you could see that with the bouncing front leg to kind of keep that light, and those snapping inside and outside leg kicks. If you guys did order the main event or did order the main card, you would have seen Eric Anders is a little bit more tan, but his leg was blood red after like 25 or 30 inside leg kicks. And then he started working on the outside, buckling the knee. It was a beautiful performance by Khalil. His strikes looked so crisp, and he looked so on point and so focused. And if it wasn't him moving forward and Anders would come, and by the middle of the first round, Eric Anders' leg was done. So him coming forward was like him moving in slow motion, trying to just throw his arms at anything he could hit. What's up, Jay? Welcome in, man. But yeah, it was him basically just moving in slow motion because those leg kicks had ate that front leg up. And he didn't switch stance, which, Eric Anders not the most experienced MMA fighter. I don't know if he's developed that southpaw stance yet, but that's something I thought that he might go to try to save that leg, but maybe he just thought it was better to have damage on one than both. Because Khalil was coming for that lead leg, whatever side it was on, he was snapping those leg kicks off. But even when he wasn't moving forward and creating the offense, initiating the pressure, you started to see his counterpunching and how precise and accurate it was on Eric Anders. That was a different Khalil Roundtree. That was a different fighter that I had, from what I had seen from him in a long time. I remember he was beating OSP in their fight, and OSP won, and Corey Anderson was beating OSP, and OSP came back and won. But Khalil looks like, just with that striking he was very, high level, and I knew that he was obviously a good striker, had bombs in his hands, but man, it wasn't just bombs he was throwing bullets, like precise, accurate darts that were heavy. So yeah, I'm excited to see how he improves, because the way this light heavyweight division's going, there's always going to be a new contender. And if John Jones is good at his word, and we'll talk more about John Jones later, but if he's good at his word to say, I want to be more, I want to fight more, I want to be more active, then guys like Khalil Roundtree are only 2 or 3 wins away from looking at a title shot, because, you just got Anthony Smith, who had just had 3 light heavyweight fights, or 2, gets a title shot. You're getting Santiago. He's going to get one now. So it's like the fighters at light heavyweight are all going to get that opportunity if you can put together a resume that deems it necessary for John Jones to come back. And I'm not saying that Khalil is in any way or shape going to beat John Jones. I just like the improvement. I thought he fought really well, and I just thought he was super crisp. He was really focused. He never let off the pressure, even in that third round where Eric Anders, and kudos to Eric Anders, man. That guy's chin and that guy's heart. I don't know how I felt about his corner after getting knocked down in the second round 4 times, it's not my call. I'm not going to sit here and berate his corner because I don't know if they know their guy way better than I know him. And I thought, maybe he would be more aggressive in that third, and he looked okay, and his eyes weren't, shining bright, and he wasn't seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Then who am I to say don't send him back out there? It didn't look like it didn't look good to have him back out in that third round because there was no offensive threat, and you could see that Roundtree wasn't giving him his power or any of his strikes any respect. He was just walking right through him and throwing 1-2s and those leg kicks right to the body. Like he was not respecting him at all in the striking game, or his wrestling at that point. So kudos to Eric Anders for having the heart to stick in there and keep going. And even after he got dropped 4 times to get back up, man, you can't teach that kind of heart. And while he didn't win the fight, man, I'm sure he won a lot of fans. I was already a huge fan of Eric Anders, why I picked him in the fight. But as everybody that's going to stay in here and see, we're going to all realize that my picks were garbage. The entire fight card, I pretty much missed every fight. I don't know what is going on with me. I don't know why I can't pick. The one fight I did pick right, I didn't believe I was going to get that right. I thought when I picked Dwight Grant, he was actually, I thought he was going to lose to Joban, and I was like, whatever, man. I got to get one that I don't really know him. It's a toss-up, and I just picked Grant. Every other fight I lost, I'm pretty sure. So if you guys saw the thumbnail, you are talking and looking at the worst MMA picker in the history of the sport. What's up, Assam? But yeah, so that was kind of where I went with the whole Khalil Roundtree fight. I thought that was a really eye-opening and opportunity-opening fight for Roundtree. I think he can do a lot in that light heavyweight division. I would like to see him take on somebody that is going to crowd him a little more and is going to pressure him a little more to see how that Muay Thai stance and that Muay Thai style, like strict Muay Thai, how that holds up against a guy that's going to wrestle you around a little bit. But we'll see. I think it's an interesting couple months and the rest of the year for Khalil Roundtree. Okay. What else did we have? I don't want to just jump into the co-main and the main until we go through if there was other performances that I thought I liked. I'm just blanking on what the results were here. Eric Anders, Joban. Yeah, no, that's okay. We'll jump right into it then. Shit. Like I said, man, I really thought Alan Joban was gonna win, and I picked Dwight Grant again just because I didn't want to. I just didn't know that I was a toss-up, and I was like, okay. But every other fight I missed. Krylov choked out my boy OSP after OSP had choked him out a couple years ago, so I guess that's irony and poetry in motion there. But then we got the co-main event of the evening. I considered it myself. I said it on this podcast, the main event. No disrespect to Max Holloway or Dustin Poirier. It just, this fight between Kelvin Gastelum and Isreal Adesanya had the potential for fireworks. It had the potential to be amazing, and boy, did it ever live up and more. I saw some people saying it was the best fight that I've ever seen. It's up there. It's definitely up there as one of the best fights I've ever seen, especially the best fight I've ever seen live. I would either say that one, probably that one, because it was Conor Nate too for a long time. But that one I feel like is the best fight maybe possibly I've ever seen in my life. It just had so many different layers, and it had so many different conflict and resolution moments. Like it was almost like Isreal said in his interview today with Ariel, it was almost like a movie. I mean, because you had the plot thickening because Kelvin comes out, and we'll just kind of break down the fight. Kelvin comes out, and he's coming right at Isreal, which I thought he would do. I thought he would pressure him. I did think Kelvin would use more wrestling, and he didn't. He did try to land a couple takedowns here and there, and it looked like those were only shots because he was either tired or hurt. So it didn't look like it was really a part of his game plan. He was going to stand and bang with Adesanya, and damn, did he ever do a good job of it. I think he used his head movement to really confuse Isreal Adesanya, especially early. He was pressuring Isreal, but making Isreal throw, before him, and he was countering that big. He was throwing the left as an overhand to start the fight. He was really coming over the top and really trying to land that left hand over the top. Then he made the adjustment to throw the left straight, and it started doing some damage to the point where he started to really get on Isreal. And I can't remember if it was in the late first or the early second, but he was really gaining confidence in the striking with Isreal. He was really starting to, and I think he might have wobbled him in that first round, or the early second, and you started to see Kelvin start to really wing shots. I'm talking like for the bleachers he was throwing. Like every shot was meant to put the lights off, you know. Isreal is, like I said, he's more of a, I don't want to say point fighter, but he's going to tag you, and the accumulation of those is going to really have an effect on you. But Kelvin was swinging for the absolute nosebleeds. He was hitting home run balls, right? And so you saw him swing. I think it was this overhand left, completely overshot, and Isreal came back with a straight right on the chin and dropped Kelvin. And what we were going to see after that, we've all known that Kelvin is a pit bull. He has a huge head and he's a strong chin. Accuracy, though, man. Excuse me, I'm burping. Accuracy from Isreal Adesanya tagged him right on the chin, and down went Kelvin. And that was a huge moment in the fight because to that point, I had Kelvin winning rounds 1 and 2. So that might have been in the third. If I'm remembering wrong, I'll have to go back and watch it again. I watched it twice. I just couldn't remember what happened at what time. But at that point, I'd had Kelvin two rounds to 0. Or no, 1 round to 0. And then I had to give that one to Isreal because he tagged him late in that second round and had Kelvin really hurt. And Kelvin was, and again, winning the round up to that point because he was advancing on Isreal. He was landing power shots. Isreal was fighting off his back foot a little bit, trying to, it seemed like, figure out what Kelvin was doing to mitigate some of what Isreal had to offer him. I don't think Isreal hit him with one head kick. Kelvin blocked every single head kick. I mean, he might have hit him with one question mark kick and kind of, you know, staggered him a little bit, but he didn't hit him with these, you know, beautiful kicks that you see him winding up and splashing on people, you know, throughout his career so far. So Kelvin did a really good job of mitigating what Isreal is really good at, which is kind of comboing you to death, like tagging you and to hit you with 5 or 6, kind of Max Holloway style, then back off, let you come in, hit you with one more, and just frustrate you to the point where you start swinging crazy, and then he goes after you. And so at that point, I had Isreal with the second, Kelvin with the first. We go to the third. Isreal does more of the same, just tagging Kelvin and hitting him when Kelvin can't hit him back. Obviously, that reach, which was an 8.5-inch reach, that came back to be a huge factor in the fight. Because once Kelvin started to slow down a little bit and Isreal started to find his groove, that jab was there, and Kelvin was landing his jab. Kelvin was popping Isreal with that jab throughout the fight. And like I said in the beginning, I thought Kelvin did a better job through probably 3 or 4 rounds of keeping his head off the center line when he was throwing, and Isreal kept his head straight in there, right in the pocket, and Kelvin just tagged it up. But in the third, like I said, more of the same from Isreal. He did a lot he did more in that third round, I thought, than he had done in the previous 2. I think he started to find his groove, and his strikes started to land more crisply. He started really giving Kelvin some problems with that length, and I thought he had that round. So I would say that at that point it was 2-1 Isreal, and then Kelvin comes back in the 4th round. And Kelvin, and you know, give the guy credit, he stayed in there when it got bad in that 5th round. But in that 4th round, after just giving up 2 rounds to the opponent, not, you know, obviously not on purpose, but just giving, you know, not being able to get it done and not being able to figure out Isreal, he found a way to let those power shots through. The overhand left started to land, the straight left started to land, and he hit Isreal with enough of those straight lefts, enough of them over and over and over, that he was able to get a high kick off and clanged it on Isreal right against his neck, and it wobbled Isreal Adesanya to the point where Kelvin had him hurt and tried to go for the kill because, of course, you know, why not? Both guys are super tired. Why would you not want to go for that kill at that moment? So he went for it, and unfortunately, he didn't get it done. I say unfortunately for Kelvin, obviously, you know, no bias here, but unfortunately he couldn't get it done in that moment, and it showed both guys, you know, really digging deep, and it showed Isreal's ability to handle adversity, which we hadn't seen, which was part of the main reason I picked against him in the fight. We just never had him see, you know, I thought it would be in a different way. I thought he was going to have to face Kelvin's wrestling and the adversity there, but he stuffed pretty much every takedown, got out of every single clinch. Anything up against the cage, he just slid away from. I mean, this guy is the real deal, man. And I won't doubt him again. And it wasn't that I was doubting him to begin with. It was just the fact that I'd seen Kelvin go through some adversity. I'd seen Kelvin, you know, 4 fights, missing weight, having to come back, fight, getting injured in fights. I'd seen him go through it, even this last part with, fight taken away from him the day of fight day, with Whitaker. So for Isreal, this was a big test, and he passed it, man, especially in that 4th round. He dug deep. And so at that point, I had it 2-2 going into the 5th round. Anyone's fight. I mean, anybody's fight in that 5th round. Whoever won the 5th round, in my opinion, was going to win that fight. And Isreal Adesanya said, cool, hold my beer. I'm going to go and hit a 10-8 round because I feel like that's what it was. I don't know if he even got the 10-8 from some of the judges. I think it was a 49-46, so he might have gotten a 10-8 in that round. But, man, he put it on Kelvin. I think he dropped him 3 times in the round, and he was just a different level of viciousness, that I'd seen from Isreal, hadn't seen from Isreal. He brought to that 5th round. He was trying to shut the lights off, and he was going for it late in that round. There was a couple times in that round, too, where Kelvin did get a hold of him, got him onto the ground, went for the takedown, and Isreal threw up a standing guillotine, and it looked tight on Kelvin, who obviously you would consider to be the better grappler, and then off of his back threw up a triangle that was tight. So Isreal does have some submissions that I did not know he was either learning or knew how to do at this point. So he, it didn't obviously submit Kelvin, but it was, a little bit of a danger zone. It was a little bit of a warning to say, hey, look, you might be the better wrestler and you might be the better grappler, but I got some stuff in the back pocket. So if you want to go there, we can go there and we'll see what happens. And I thought he did a really good job of, other than that, staying on his feet and trying to close the show. And he was that close. Kelvin was almost out of there. Thanks, Kels. He was that close, and they called the horn. An amazing fight. 2 guys that just went to war. I know we say that a lot in MMA. Oh, go to war, go to war. This was, man. Like, their faces did not look the same, and they lost. They always say, you lose a piece of yourself in there, and I think Kelvin and Isreal definitely lost a piece of themselves in there to each other. Not so much they just lost it, but they gave themselves so much to try to dig down and win that fight, that I don't see how you come out of that not a changed man. And I think they both were. I mean, obviously, huge respect to both guys, huge respect from both guys. After the fight on Twitter, they were really congratulating each other. And that's something that, people, and myself included, this is why I want to get back this. I want to get into this MMA training so badly, because you don't understand what the other person, so I'm stumbling a little bit over my words. Isreal and Kelvin will be the only 2 people that know exactly how they felt in that moment. In that octagon against each other for 25 minutes, they're the only people that will ever know how hard that is. And that's almost a partnership between them. Yes, they're facing off against each other, but that's almost a partnership between those 2 guys to be, dance partners, octagon cohorts. I don't know what you would call it, but both guys are the only people in the world at that moment, even the 15,000 in the arena, and I'm sure the 300 or so thousand watching at home, they'll never know how much it took to dig, to really tell yourself, I'm not losing. He's not putting me away. And in that moment, that's something they can both share for the rest of their lives. The only 2 people that were there were those 2 guys. But Isreal was really impressive, man. He did some things that I just had never seen from him, especially the jiu-jitsu. But just, the ability to dig down and really be that gritty, knockdown, drag out fight that I didn't think he wanted, and he even confirmed that today on Isreal's show, on Ariel's show. He didn't want to go in there and just have a slugfest. His style is to get in there, knock the dude out, get cash, leave. That's the striker style, but that's the finesse striker style, I should say. But he dug down and he really got it done. So props to Isreal. One of my favorite fights I've ever seen, if not the best fight I've ever seen. And then we had the main event, and it had a lot to live up to. Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier. As you guys know, I picked Max, just like I picked Kelvin, just like I picked Eric Anders, just like I picked OSP. So there it is. I really thought coming into this fight that Max Holloway put a pressure on guys that was not sustainable for most people. And when he starts to put that barrage on you, he doesn't stop. He does not stop. And I knew going into the fight that he gets hit. I said this. If you guys want to go back and watch my last podcast, we talked about it. I said, Brian, Brian Ortega lost that fight clearly, 100%. But Max got hit in that fight, and Brian Ortega was catching him with some shots. Now, he's not the most powerful guy, but power is so subjective too, because Max looks big at 145. And he was able to take the shots from Brian Ortega and still move forward and hit him with some, his big combos and that pace that he just wants to break you and overwhelm you over and over. And just finally, the accumulation will stop you, much like I said about Isreal. And at 45, he looks like a big guy. Well, he comes to 55 and Dustin Poirier, and Dustin Poirier looked different than Dustin Poirier usually looks. He looked a lot bigger. He looked a lot like he had done a lot of weight training leading up to this fight. He was just, chiseled out, and he looked like he was just a rock in there. And Max looked skinny. Max looked a little bit skinny for 155. He looked tall, and Poirier said his legs were very strong, but it just didn't look the same, and didn't look like he possessed the same strength as other 55ers do. And so the fight starts, and right away, Max, comes out aggressive, but so does Dustin Poirier. And Max is trying to, one, obviously, time the left hand from Dustin and throw over the top and start that big counter. But Dustin's not playing into the game. Dustin comes out and starts, letting Max kind of move forward a little bit. It's just using that head movement. His Dustin Poirier's counter boxing, and it's just boxing in general, his counter punching and head movement is beautiful. And some of the stuff he was giving Max and then taking away from him and then throwing the counter over the top was insane. You sleep on Dustin Poirier's boxing technique and just his stand-up skills in general just because he's one of the guys that's been slept on in that division. And, you see him fight guys like Justin Gaethje, and you're like, okay, well, Justin Gaethje's a wrestler. Eddie Alvarez, okay, well, Eddie's a wrestler. Justin Gaethje's not – he rarely wrestles. He's a wrestler, or used to be. He rarely wrestles. He likes to go in there and mix it up and throw leg kicks and come with right hands over the top. And Poirier shut all that shit down. He stopped him. And I think I even watched an interview with Gaethje recently where he said, look, man, Khabib's a hard fight, but Dustin Poirier might be my worst matchup. And so Dustin's a nightmare for some of these guys, and he was for Max too. He comes out right away in the first round, and he's throwing bombs on Max, and he hurts him. He wobbles him twice in the first round. Caught him with a left to the chin, caught him with one to the side of the head. He was giving him that left hand over and over, and Max was walking into it. And when he wobbled him, he got up and really was looking for that finish in that first round. And the only thing I kept thinking was, gosh, Dustin, don't burn out, don't gas out in this first round, because this guy's going to be around all five. If you can't put him away, and I've never seen Max be put away, if you can't put him away, he's going to be around all five. And so Max somehow survives. I mean, Dustin was hitting him with some shots, and Max, man, again, a tribute to Max and all respect to Max. He got tagged and was able to recover and come back and do his thing. And so Dustin really dominated in that first round. I was surprised it wasn't a 10-8, I guess because it wasn't a full knockdown. He did wobble him twice, so I don't know, maybe you can't give the 10-8 there. But then we had the second round. Dustin did more of the same. It was just Max being used to fighting one way, and that's just forward. And Dustin's like, okay, cool, come forward. I'm just going to counter you. I'm going to step back and bang the left hand anytime you get out of position. And it's not that Max is necessarily out of position. He's a great striker. He comes from different angles. He shows you different stuff. And even Dustin was talking about, Isreal, what's going on? New girlfriend, Jade. Oh, okay. I see you. Jade, you got a good one. My man's a killer. Not in a bad way. He's a good dude. He's always supported the channel. And I know, obviously, it's not a huge channel, but he's always been here supporting. And if he supports you like he supports the channel, then got nothing to worry about. My man's awesome. Isreal, what's up, bud? So in the second round, Max comes out, and he's moving forward, trying to throw punches and bunches. And Poirier even said, when I thought this was cool, Poirier said, yeah, he's a good striker, man. He really mixes up his timing, when he throws, when he feints, how fast he throws. He'll kind of lob the jab out there and then blast the straight right behind it, or vice versa, just the different angles. So Max is obviously top tier, and no one's debating that. But Dustin had a simple game plan. Just draw Max in, or not even draw, let him come in like he wants and throw bombs behind it. And that's exactly what he did. And in that first and second round, it was working to a T. Max was getting tanged up every time he came in. Short left hand, uppercut, jab, jab, left hand, over the top, right hook. I mean, he was hitting him with everything you could find in the boxing handbook. And there weren't a ton of kicks thrown by either guy. They were just slugging it. And so I gave Dustin the second round. So that was 2 rounds of Dustin going into this third round. So Max really had to find something in this third round to get him going, to bring that fight back a little bit his way. And I thought that it was looking like Dustin was getting a little tired, which I feared. Even though I picked Max, man, Dustin Poirier is such a good story and such a good guy. And just, he's worked his ass off in that division for a long time and deserved this more than, maybe outside of Tony Ferguson, more than anybody. Appreciate that, Uzziah. It's not bad, right? We're going to get this little logo, this guy. We're going to get that over there soon. So, doing big things over here. 20 viewers. Big money from YouTube. Anyway, so I started to see Dustin get tired. I started to see him moving a little slower. The left hand wasn't really popping Max as well. Max was starting to use that head movement and come inside and really do some damage. And again, here's the pace. The pace started to really affect Dustin. He got put up against the cage, and Max started throwing bombs on him. And really, I didn't know at the time how hurt he was. Dustin had to, actually say that himself later. He said, look, when I was up against the cage in that third round, those thoughts started to creep in. And God bless Dustin Poirier, man. A guy that's that honest, that can tell you that in a fight, a 5-round fight, where he's fighting for the title he wanted his entire life. You gotta respect a guy that can just man up and when he doesn't have to, and just say, look, I was close. He was close to having me in that third round. I kind of went to that place where you think, oh God, here we go again, because he's had so much go against him. It's easy to kind of let yourself drift and say, well, we gave it our best shot in those first 2 rounds, but here he comes, and I'm not going to do anything about it, or I'm not going to be able to. And Dustin shook it off. He's learned. There was a point where you could look at Dustin Poirier and the mind games that Conor played with him and say those things might have had an effect on him, but it doesn't anymore. He shook it off. He was able to survive the round, and then going into the fourth, again, more of the same. It looked like Dustin was starting to put it together again a little bit, because I had Dustin winning 4 rounds, but the fourth was very close. The third, I didn't have him winning, but I had him winning the first and second clearly. The fourth, I had him kind of edging, and then the fifth, I thought he won the fight in the fifth with the huge knee. But in the fourth, Dustin started to find his groove again, find his pace a little bit, and just was slowing Max down by just landing one big counter shot after another. Max would rush in, obviously Max strategically rushing in, strategically trying to find a way in. And as soon as he would let the hands go, Dustin would come with the left counter or the check right hook. And it seemed like Max, when he was putting together shots, they weren't having the effect of one big shot from Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier, one big left hand, felt like it took Max 2 or 3 of those to really, together in unison, over and over, to really get Dustin's attention. Whereas Dustin could throw the left over the top, or even a check right hook or a jab, and Max's head was snapping back from jabs that were, jabs, but it looked like they were a lot heavier than you'd ever seen Max get hit at 45. So I gave the fourth to Dustin, and then the fifth, and some people gave the fourth to Max. So you could have had a 2-2 fight going into the fifth. And in the fifth, you saw 2 guys really, again, digging deep. These last 2 fights were really mirror images of each other. You saw 2 fights go into that fifth round very close. One I thought was tied. One I thought Dustin was ahead in, but both very close fights, and you saw them really start to have to dig. And Max had to dig before, and Dustin had too, but Dustin really showed a different commitment, a different grind, a different hunger in this fight than I had seen from him, outside of the Eddie Alvarez fight. You saw him really go for the win, not just coast for the win. He went for that win in the fifth round. He landed a huge knee on Max's face after he had Max bloodied already, and Max's his son is cage side, which is sometimes rough to see, but you got to love a kid cheering on his dad. But you can see Max's whole face bloodied already just from the power shots that Dustin keeps landing over and over, and then the huge knee up the middle as Max tries to move forward. He gets the Muay Thai plum, throws the big knee going backward, and it cuts Max from about here all the way down. He's gushing blood. He's moving forward still. I mean, both guys are savages, man. To be that hungry for a win, that you just got your whole face busted open and you're still coming forward and still talking trash. That's what Dustin was saying. He was talking trash, but in like a lighthearted way. Both guys, massive respect to each other. But Dustin, like I said, lands the big knee, puts a little icing on the cake, and walks out of there with the W. And we have a new interim lightweight champion. Again, an amazing fight. Had it not been for Kelvin and Isreal Adesanya, that would have been my fight of the night. But the fight of the night, and an early candidate for fight of the year and fight of a lifetime, obviously, Kelvin Gastelum, Isreal Adesanya. And in both cases, both Max, Dustin, Kelvin, and Isreal, they're never going to be the same after a fight like that. You cannot be the same. You've left a part of yourself with that other guy. And that's not to say they're not going to fight the same. They're not going to fight even better. Or it's just mentally, after you go through something like that, how strong you get mentally, knowing that you've been there and come out of it, either a champion or just come through it like Kelvin and Max did, that's going to stick with you, and it's going to propel them to new heights as well. Sam says, Max got more significant strikes than Dustin. Can you tell me how you scored the fight? Because people think just because he's throwing harder means he's winning. I don't get it. Significant strikes are akin to CompuStrike numbers in boxing. I don't like the significant strike counter because it doesn't indicate exactly what's happening in a fight. I understand the point of the fight is to be touched more or to be touched less than your opponent. You're trying to touch him more and not get touched. I understand if from a technical standpoint, I understand that's the goal of the fight. But if Max is moving forward and touching Dustin on the hands, right? Dustin had a really good guard. He had this weird L guard he's throwing up. But if Dustin is getting touched more on the arms, on the hands, and then he starts to open up and he's getting touched here and here, Dustin's walking right through him and throwing a massive left hand over the top, and Max gets wobbled and he's coming on strong. If it's a significant strikes amount that's 2 times or 75% more than Dustin throws, then we have a topic of discussion. But when Dustin is throwing and hitting and landing, not as many, but he's landing a good amount and a percentage that is akin to Max's percentage, and you see the differences in the impact of the strikes, because strikes themselves, I understand, are a huge factor. Landing more than the other opponent, and boxing especially, is the key to a win. But in the octagon, man, it seems to me that significant strikes are not computed as well as they need to be, because I feel like a significant strike isn't a 3-punch combo where 1 gets through and hits and 2 are slaps to the side of the arms. And I understand that it's hard to count in real time, so going back and watching the fight again, Max scores more, Dustin lands more velocity and more pressure with the actual punch. More damage is done by Dustin by far. And in the first 2 rounds, it wasn't close. Max did a lot of work in that 3rd round with his significant strikes. Did a lot of work. And then the 4th as well. That's why I said I gave Dustin the 4th. I thought he landed, like I said, more impactful shots. But it was a slower round. Max did more in the 4th round as far as significant strikes. I get it. But I just scored it. I scored Dustin having a spectacular first round. I thought it could have been 10-8. Some people didn't. And then the second round, I thought Dustin just had more explosiveness to his strikes. I thought Max was the aggressor moving forward, but it doesn't mean a lot if you're getting, every time you move forward, you land a jab or a right hand, and Dustin counters or slips it, and you kind of nick him, and he throws a big left over the top and catches you in the temple with it, catches you on the cheek with it, bloodies those eyes, like the damage is done at that point. And if we're going round by round, the total significant strikes could have, Max could have been put over the top by the significant strikes landed in round 3 alone. So, a total basis is kind of tough. If we go round by round significant strikes, then I think we have a different story there. But I'm not a big fan of the way that significant strikes are measured in general, because a lot of punches in real time are hard to see if they land or not. And even if they land on the arms, I guess you can consider it landing. But if it's not doing any significant damage, then I don't know what we're talking about. But that's kind of my reason for why I thought Dustin was winning rounds 1, 2, and 4. The punches that got through from Dustin were landing with huge impact, and Max in the third round, 100% were landing with big impact. But throughout the rest of the fight, I didn't see that how badly he looked like he hurt Dustin. I didn't see Dustin start to wobble. I didn't see him start to have to catch himself on the ground or cage walk to get up, anything like that. I didn't think that either of them fought a flawless fight, but I just thought Dustin did more to Max damage-wise. But yeah, that was the card, man. I thought that we had a fun card. We had a really fun card. I was debating on even buying it, guys. I was going to do the whole Monday morning quarterback and just kind of look at highlights where I could and see what happened during the fights. But man, this is why I love this sport. Every time I'm like, I'm not gonna buy this one this week, I go 3 hours before the fight. I can't do it. I love the sport. So I'm glad we bought the pay-per-view. I'm glad that we got to see 2 fights that I'll never forget. I know, I'm sure you guys are in the same boat because it's moments in time, man. And Dustin said something that was really cool because, amid a lot of the Conor McGregor, Habib stuff and a lot of the, sometimes over-the-top trash talk and a little bit of the inappropriate stuff, these 2 or 4 individuals really exemplified what it is to be a star and not have to create controversy to be the star. Conor will never, he'll never not be a star. That guy is the biggest star MMA will ever have, Conor McGregor. Boom. But you don't have to be Conor McGregor to be a star. You don't have to be Conor McGregor to be a superstar. And you saw a superstar making win for Isreal Adesanya. And he's his own person. He's not Conor McGregor. He's not, Muhammad Ali. He's not those type of, he's not the same person that is anybody that's come before him. He does some similar things. He has a similar fighting style. He has, a little bit of a wit to him. He's marketable, of course. But you saw a superstar making event, not by what he said, not by how many times he threw something through a bus. And again, you guys see the proper 12. I'm a huge, huge fan of Conor McGregor, but there's other ways to do it. And Conor will tell you the same thing. He didn't become the highest paid fighter in the world off of antics and microphones at a press conference. He became highest paid MMA fighter in the world by walking through a division, starching the greatest 145er at that time to ever live, then moving up, getting beat, coming back from that defeat, winning that fight, and winning another belt. That's how you do it. It's what you do inside the octagon. And all 4 guys left it all in there. And those are star-making performances for guys like Kelvin, guys like Isreal, which the UFC needs. We need more stars. We need more guys to prop up this sport. Shogun, what's going on, baby? We need more guys to prop up the sport in the mainstream because I come from the world of football where you can be a star as soon as you're drafted. You're a star as soon as you win a Heisman Trophy in college or as soon as you make a huge play in a big game, in a big bowl game. Those are star-making performances. In the UFC, it's a little harder. It's a little harder to break through to the mainstream because this sport isn't as big and hasn't been around as long. So when you have guys like Isreal who win their fight, show respect after the fact, you gain those fans because you showed the respect and because you left it all in there. And I loved what Dustin Poirier said. He's obviously a huge boxing fan, and I'm thinking he's a little bit familiar with Teddy Atlas like I am myself. And he said after his fight, and he said in the words of Teddy Atlas, "Tonight I had 25 minutes to make life fair." And that quote, if I've never heard Teddy say that, but man, that's a great quote. And it exemplifies everything Dustin Poirier is in those words perfectly. Because this guy, especially in the fight world, I don't know about Dustin's personal life and before fighting, and he always seems to thank his wife for times of when he was struggling and when he was going through things. So I'm sure that he's been through a ton outside of the cage. So not even factoring in some of the BS he's had to go through to get to the title. Outside of the cage, I'm sure Dustin's been through more than probably all of us and a lot of people. But it just made so much sense that he was the one that said that because this guy has been through the 145 division. He was the number 4 ranked guy at 145 when Conor came in and beat him. Or no, when he was fighting Max and then Conor beat him. And then he bumps up. He goes to 55. He goes on a little winning streak and then loses to Michael Johnson, TKO. And it just seems like every time he gets momentum, and I've heard people say this, and for the longest time it was true, is Dustin Poirier will beat everybody until that big fight, and he just can't get over the hump. And by God, did he get over the hump, because after that Michael Johnson fight, this guy fought the killers of the division. He fought Anthony Pettis, beat him. And people sleep on Anthony Pettis. That guy is a monster. We saw this against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Beating Anthony Pettis. Goes on to beat Justin Gaethje. Goes on to beat Eddie Alvarez. I mean, this guy was just beating people. Couldn't get a title shot. Wasn't offered this fight. He wasn't offered this fight at first. It was going to go to Tony Ferguson. And obviously Tony's dealing with some stuff outside of the octagon, but let that sink in. Dustin I think he had won 9 of his last 10, and Tony obviously had won 11 straight, so he deserved that, but they were going to give it to a rising Max Holloway, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with it, but if you're Dustin, you got to look at it and say, gosh, man, what do I got to do? Because he was going to get skipped over again, and say Tony wins that title, there's the unification bout. Dustin's not in it, because that's going to be Tony and Khabib. So Dustin waits again. He could get the Nate Diaz fight. He could get the Conor return fight, but this guy wants gold. And I'm telling you, a guy that makes the most of his opportunity like Dustin did Saturday night, like he said, for 25 minutes, he got to make life fair. Stuff like that, man, it gives me goosebumps, because it's like, that's real. You can't script Dustin, man. You can't script moments like that, or the Isreal fight. Those are the best moments, because people say it's like a movie, but it's better because it's not scripted. It's better because it's real life. It's nuts, man. All right. Give Dustin Khabib early prediction. Someone said, and I saw this video, someone said as soon as Dustin won the title, Khabib was in training. Jesus Christ. Oh, man. Right now, we're not even 4 months from the fight. You guys want my prediction? Okay. Early prediction. I'm not the most decisive guy when it comes to predictions. Assam, you've seen, I'm 1-5 in my last 6. So we got to I'll predict today, but if I want to change my mind, don't hate me. Don't roast me. Let me just change my mind. All right. Right now, if I'm looking at it, Khabib showed that his striking is dangerous. Obviously, he can hit you with that, what he calls his eagle punch. His ground game is vicious. I think he's obviously strong enough to hold Dustin down if he gets a hold of him. Dustin's boxing is very crisp, and his ground game's not anything to joke with. Dustin submitted a ton of guys. I know Khabib's a different animal. I think the only difference you'll see is if Dustin gets the fight. Both guys can take a punch. I think Khabib can. I mean, I've seen him take some shots. I saw him take the straight left from Michael Johnson. I've seen, even though I've always been wary as that thing actually landed. I think that it was deflected, or Khabib was just trying to duck out of the way. But he took some shots from Conor. He took a nice uppercut from Conor. That's the question, really. How does Khabib handle the pressure being put back on him? How does he handle fighting backward? We haven't really seen a lot. Was it Gleason Tebow that gave him some real trouble? I can't remember if that was Tebow or somebody else that gave him some real trouble a couple of years back. But I would say that early prediction would have to be Khabib, just because when he's on top of you, it's damn near impossible to get him off. And he doesn't have to overwhelm you and TKO you or submit you. He can win by decision. He can, I don't want to say lay on you. He can grapple you and take advantage of being on top for, you saw it in the Conor fight. He can do it for a round, an entire round, 4 minutes or so of a round. So I would say early prediction would have to be either Khabib by unanimous or Khabib by submission. That's what I would say. You know what? Let's change that. Khabib by unanimous decision or Khabib by TKO. I don't think Dustin gets submitted. Unless he just gives up his neck because he's getting punched in the head or something like that. That's what I would say at the moment. Assam. Now you're going to make me pick freaking, what is it? 4, 5, 6, 7 months from the fight? Jesus. But yeah, I do think that. I don't even know. See, here's the thing. Dana keeps saying that he's going to make that fight. He's going to make that title fight. But if Tony comes back cleared, who do you give Tony? I don't know who you give Tony, because and again, I don't know that Tony Ferguson's dealing with a ton of stuff outside of the cage. I'm not going to go into any of that because that's his personal business. But say he gets cleared and everything's all good to go and he checks with the UFC. Who do you give him? Do you give him Conor? Is Conor going to come back for that fight? I don't think so. I don't think Conor takes that fight, Shogun. I just don't. I don't see why Conor would. It doesn't. All it's going to do is either show more flaws in Conor's game. Tony's going to rack up another one and still not get a title shot, at least at that moment, because I would assume that Tony would be back before they would make the Khabib fight, just because he's ready. Conor's suspension will be over by then, because Conor got what, a 6 month, something like that. So I would assume that he would get that fight. Tony is not going to get the rematch with Khabib right away. And if Tony loses, if Conor, bangs that straight left and Tony's known to get hit and get rocked, he survives, which is crazy. But say Conor puts him away, where does Tony go? Where does he go from there? Because Tony's what, 39, 38? There's not a lot left, I would hope. So I don't know how much he's really got. So I guess, other than that, you have Justin Gaethje hanging around. And Tony's not. I don't think Tony would take that fight either, because he doesn't deserve anything less than gold, in my opinion. And I guess Conor is maybe the only suitable opponent. I just don't see Conor's camp agreeing to that fight. Because why would you come back to get, possibly win, possibly against a guy that's undefeated in his last 11, and he's a monster and pushes pace. His pace is insane. I just don't see the benefit for Conor. I like the Justin fight for Tony. I like the Justin fight for Tony as well. I like that one as well. That fight is fireworks waiting to happen. Could you imagine two guys like that would just slug it out? Because there's no, in Justin's mind anyway, maybe, who knows? There's no way that Tony gets outpaced, but Justin Gaethje's like, there's no way you're going to finish me. So it's it's that rock in the hard place, two trains running right at each other. We'll see what happens. Conor will get a bigger pay for Ferguson. Conor's going to get a big pay regardless. It doesn't matter. You could put the mailman on the other side of the cage. You could put the mailbox on the other side of the cage, and Conor's going to sell 1 million pay-per-views. It's just the way it is. Conor's that big of a star. And the UFC would promote it correctly, I'm assuming. And really, all you have to do to promote Conor is give him a microphone, So I don't necessarily think he gets paid more for Ferguson. I'm sure whoever he gets, to be honest, I think you would have to pay him more to fight Gaethje. I think you would have to pay Conor more to fight a guy like Justin Gaethje, even if it's in Ireland, like Gaethje's talking about, or Vegas, wherever. For Conor to come back for that fight, you would have to pay him more, I think, than you would have to pay him to fight Tony. But either way, he's getting paid when he comes back. You want to hear my take on JDS Francis? God, that one's coming up too, huh? What is that, in the summer? Is that in May? My take on JDS Francis. It's hard. The only thing that you worry about with JDS usually is his ability to keep control of the fight, right? Because he can throw spinning hook kicks. He can throw nasty hands. He's very quick. His combos are very tight. But he seems to get a little over exuberant at points. He seems to get into a point where he doesn't have to, but he likes to slug. He likes to trade. And at heavyweight, anybody wins it when you trade. It doesn't really matter. And if you trade with a guy like Francis, he wins. There's a way to beat Francis Ngannou, and Stipe Miocic laid the blueprint. There's a way to do it. And it's not by getting up in his face and pressuring him and throwing with him, because that guy's got hands like center blocks. He's got hands like wrecking balls. Like the power he has, and when I say power is subjective, this guy's power is there's no subjectivity to it. He's the most powerful puncher in the UFC, in my opinion, because you saw Derek Lewis' punching power, insane, and JD has handled it. But Francis Ngannou, he just clipped Cain Velasquez, and Velasquez forgot he even got hit. He hit Curtis Blades on the back of the temple behind his guard. Curtis Blades had his guard up. He hit him behind his guard and knocked him out. He caught Stipe with one significant shot. One. in their fight, and Stipe's eye was closed. And it was a counter left hook going backwards. Hit him like that, going backwards. He sent Alistair Overeem to the freaking moon with his shot. I don't even know if Alistair Overeem's head's been recovered yet. He sent him to Mars. So this guy, he hits different, man, and he's quick. He's very quick, and his technique isn't terrible. You know, he's not going to throw a huge volume, but when he throws, good God, that dude moves the world. He makes the world shake. If I were going to predict it right now, someone's going to sleep, and I haven't seen Francis really get hurt yet. That's the only thing I think. Overeem's fighting Saturday night. Oh, cool. So NASA got up there and got his head, brought it back, and we sewed it back on. Sweet. No, I just think that Francis, his power is insane. JDS will mix it up. He's a smart fighter, JDS is, though. So I don't know, man. He's taken out two power guys with Tai Tuivasa. He took him out. Took out Derek Lewis. The kicks could be a factor. The kicks could definitely be a factor because Francis is so long. JDS using some of his kicks would definitely help out, maybe take out that front leg. But if I'm predicting now, I'll say Francis. It's got to be early, though, with Francis. I feel like his power doesn't go over the rounds because you saw when he hit Stipe, that was late in the fight. It's just his technique does. And so some of his power, his power shots aren't really as fluid, and they're kind of easy to maneuver past. So I'll say Francis early, mid-first, early second. TKO or knockout. Overeem's fighting Saturday. Sweet. Well, guys, shoot. Any other fights you guys want me to talk about? Any other big fights coming up that you guys think you have some opinions about, or I might? Because I'm trying to think who we have coming up. I saw the whole press conference they did before the fight Saturday. John Jones fighting Santiago. I think John wins that fight unless he gets clipped. Rose versus Jessica Andrade. That's right. Thank you, Shogun. Kelsey's favorite fighter is Rose Namajunas. And Rose is a matchup nightmare for a lot of girls. Holly Holm versus Amanda Nunes should be a good one. Rose is so dangerous for a lot of people because her boxing and her stand-up technique down with Trevor Whitman in Denver is always improving. And you see that from guys like Justin Gaethje too. Those people in that camp, whatever Trevor Whitman's doing, their stand-up is improving rapidly over there. Like Rose was known as a submission artist and a thug jiu-jitsu master. Like I think she was I don't know, but she was choking people, throwing up flying arm bars, flying triangles. Like she was known for her jiu-jitsu, and then all of a sudden she starts to stand up a girl. She head kicks Michelle Watterson, then she throws a left hook that takes down Joanna. Is like her stand-up, and then she outclassed Joanna in the second fight. So her stand-up's there. It's just Andrade is a different animal. And the reason Joanna was able to handle Andrade so well was because she cut off angles. She slipped. She slides. She's very quick. She moves in and out. She point fights. And she point fought against Andrade. And Andrade, if you watch that fight again, she never stopped coming forward. She didn't do a lot. She couldn't. The reach was a lot there. And Joanna's great with her jab. Her hands are some of the best. And when she uses her kicks, phenomenal technique, phenomenal striking technique. Power is not what she's known for, but she tags you and she keeps you at range, and that's what she did to Jessica Andrade. If Andrade has found a way, I mean, good Lord, you saw her right hand land against Kovalevich. That right hand was insane. But if she finds a way to land a big power shot or get a hold of Rose, her wrestling is ridiculous. And I'm with you, man. I think that Rose has got a terrible matchup on her hands. I hesitate to just pick upsets all day. I still think I would go with Rose if she can find a way to keep distance. Rose is quick too, and her striking technique is always improving. And I'm sure they've got a plan down there in Denver for Andrade. But you're going into her backyard. This is a Brazilian fight with a Brazilian it's a Brazilian location with the Brazilian in a fight. I'm not going to say that the judges are biased, but it's in Brazil. So if that decision becomes a factor, it's something you always have to be aware of out there. And then Holly Holm Nunes, yeah, her boxing's very clean. She outdueled Joanna in basically a kickboxing fight in that second fight. Holm versus Nunes should be good. I like the matchup for Holly Holm. I think that Holly Holm represents a lot of the same things that Valentina Shevchenko represents as far as her stand-up kickboxing. I think that Holly, while she doesn't maybe have the same power as a guy or a girl like that was bad, a girl like Cyborg, Holly definitely has the technique to be able to stand in there with Nunes. And I've said this from way back, years and years ago. Valentina, I thought, beat Amanda Nunes in their fight. I thought she won a split decision. Unfortunately, it didn't go her way that night, but I think Holly can present some of the same problems with her being a kick-heavy kickboxer. I think she can really use those leg kicks. I think she can even confuse Amanda a little bit with Amanda's kind of forward style. Even though she didn't implement that against Cyborg, I think that Holly does have a good shot. I'd still probably pick Amanda just because, again, Amanda's counterpunching is insane. And she is, at this moment, the greatest female fighter in MMA history. But I would still pick Amanda probably either by late TKO or decision. This is if Nunes wins, do you consider her the GOAT of women's MMA? I consider her the GOAT right now. That's just because when you knock out Ronda Rousey the way she knocked her out very quickly, it wasn't a figuring out process. And that wasn't the same Ronda maybe, but I think she was an exposed Ronda at that point where girls were better than her were coming into the sport. Girls that had been better than her outside of the sport were coming in and showing that she wasn't the top of the mountain. But as far as the recognition of her beating her and to the outside world, how much that meant, it was a huge win. And then obviously to do what she did to Cyborg, who was considered, pound for pound, best women's MMA fighter of all time. I think as of right now, even before the Holly Holm fight, you have to consider her that. Now, if Holly Holm beats her, then you have a consideration for Holly as well, and Cyborg. But that was the craziest set of counterpunches to put Cyborg down. And Jason Perillo's face was the worst part about it. I'm a huge fan of Jason Perillo. Their Ruka gym's kind of close to where I live. And I think that they do some really good work down there. But his face was so... it was pretty funny after Cyborg lost. Not laughing, obviously, at Cyborg's loss. It was just the disbelief that you saw in a guy that really thought she was indestructible. And Amanda said, nah, watch this. Shogun said something. Who do I think about? Ariane Lipsky. I haven't seen much. We're going to look right now, though. Shogun, what do you think? Do you think this is a fighter I can start to find? I saw a little bit Saturday night with her, but I didn't get to watch the fight. Oh, did it get... What is this? Did she fight last Saturday night? Oh, this is the girl that the violence queen or whatever, yeah? Didn't she get beat in her first fight? Or she fought Calderwood, that's right. Okay. Sorry, I was confused. They gave Calderwood the decision? Is that what I'm seeing? Yeah. I didn't see much of it, brother, to be honest with you. I did not see much of it. I mean, it looked like, just looking at the wherever Assam is, he's going to die. Just looking at the total strikes and significant strikes, it looks like, Calderon did her thing. But I saw some of her highlights outside of UFC as the violence queen. She hits hard. I love stand-up fighters, and I love people that go for it, and she seems like somebody that I'd be a big fan of. I didn't get to watch her fight, but I definitely will keep looking out for her. Well, guys, I think that's it for today. I'm really glad I got to come in and talk to you guys about the fights, about how I felt about just, 4 warriors just going at it, man. I thought that was a really cool card. I thought we really got to see some stuff as MMA fans that we don't get to see a lot. And that's not just like fights. We got to see, lightning in a bottle almost from 4 guys back to back. Like you see huge fights You don't see a lot of fights like Kelvin and Isreal Adesanya, but you see good fights a lot. But to have two of the best of the year, and in the case of Adesanya and Kelvin, the best of a lifetime, back-to-back, that's special. That's really special. And for it to be the first one on ESPN's pay-per-view system, that's huge for them too. Yeah, I was entertained. I was captivated. I was mesmerized by just how far they were willing to go, how deep they wanted to dig, and how deep all four guys did dig. No one quit. No one called for the towel. No one backed out. No one gave up. And just the respect that they garnered not only for each other, but from the nation itself and from the MMA community itself. I thought it was a really, really telling card. And the two things I'll take away from the fights were Isreal Adesanya's heart. Take nothing from that guy. His heart was amazing to be able to stick in there and come back after Kelvin had really put it on him in that first couple of exchanges. And Dustin Poirier's ability to persevere through years of being underrated and years of struggling to get back to the top and getting that big win and then having a big loss and then having to go back and start again. Time away from his family. I know all these fighters take time from their family, but taking time to go down to American Top Team and train when he's away from his family in Louisiana and he's got a new daughter. And just sacrifice. It teaches me a lot. It teaches me a lot about what I need to do, to be successful in my own life. And I hope it does the same for you guys, because the ability to keep pushing when you don't think you have anymore and when you don't think that it's going your way. And trust me, doing this YouTube stuff, it hasn't gone my way. But with you guys, I love it, man. I absolutely love having all 3, 5, 10, 20 of you in here, and we can just have this, this conversation and talk about what we witnessed on Saturday night. And Dustin Poirier, like he said, and like I'm going to take with me for the rest of my life, he had 25 minutes to make life fair again. That speaks a lot, man. And we had 1 hour and 3 minutes to make life fair again, and we didn't seem to get it done. So I'll catch you guys next time. I appreciate you all showing up again in full force. You guys are amazing. I love you all. And thank you, Shogun. Be the man. Thank you. Isam, always, Uzair, Kels, Jay, all of you guys, thank you so much. And we will see you next time. This is the W.A.D.E concept where you already know we are debating everything. Take it easy, guys.